I mean, I'm assuming your stance is not satirical.
No. So essentially we just believe that there's nothing that life sort of creates that justifies the pain and suffering that's inflicted.
Pain and suffering of the mother?
No, of the child, which I should say, we always talk about having children, having kids. That child's going to grow up. We're creating another human being. So the only thing we can really guarantee in their life is suffering and death. Depressing, but it's true.
What's your name, by the way?
What's that?
What's your name, by the way?
I try not to give my name out.
You can just make up a name, just for the
Sarah.
sake of the conversation.
Yeah.
My name's Zishan, that's my actual name.
Okay.
Just so the conversation flows.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah.
So you're saying one of the reasons you're against children is because when they grow up, they become, there's pain and suffering for them?
That's okay, you have to record it.
No pressure. Sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Yeah, so I said one of the reasons that you said that you're against procreation is because when children grow up, there's pain and suffering waiting for them. I said, what else other than that?
I mean, there's a whole multitude of things that can happen to a child or a human, but I mean, there's countless things that we can kind of talk about. There's hunger, pain, heartbreak, death, suffering.
Do you want to give a mic or something?
Yeah, because
Yeah, that's fine. You can. Is it okay if you just clip like on your signboard or something? Yeah, just clip it on the signboard. More efficient. You might as well do that with yours as well, or whatever.
we've got one just here.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, there's many things that can kind of go wrong in a person's life, and you can't guarantee what's going to happen to them. So when you do give birth to someone, you're taking a risk with somebody else's life, and that person can't consent to that. They can't say whether or not they want that, but you can guarantee that they're going to suffer or die. So I call that an imposition, and I think that requires a moral justification to do to somebody else.
So do you believe it's wrong or bad to procreate?
I do, and essentially, it's not that complicated. It's just that when you do that to somebody else, and you know that they're guaranteed. I mean, it's a game with 100% failure rate. We're all going to die, whether that's extremely painfully, in bed, surrounded by your loved ones. Whatever happens, we're gonna suffer, and we're gonna cause suffering. So I mean, believe that causing suffering is wrong. So.
And when you say right and wrong, where do you get your morality from?
Just what causes suffering and what doesn't. I mean, I think the only important thing, the only thing of real value, is to reduce suffering to others.
And would you say that by reducing suffering, increasing pleasure?
No. So I don't believe that causing pleasure really has any moral weight. I mean, the way we can think about it is we would never take the pleasure of a victimizer into the equation when they're causing harm to a victim. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that has any moral weight. That makes sense.
So I'm sure you agree that in certain situations and scenarios, sorry, I think I'm just being... It was all in one go as well. So I was saying that I'm sure you know in certain situations and scenarios, causing pain is actually a benefit. For example, even though you probably can't tell, I have attempted to go to the gym, and I've been told, even though I don't have much experience in this, that when you do start lifting initially, your muscles do start tearing. But again, it's no pain, no gain. So that pain is actually good, because what will result from that is, well, hopefully gains, and hopefully better health, more strength, more agility, etc., etc. So how do you kind of reconcile the two?
Well, I mean, it's obvious that pain has a utility, and that's why, I mean, we're evolved to have pain to avoid certain things. experience. And I mean, pain has a reason, but that doesn't mean that. I mean, that's not the kind of suffering that I'm talking about.
So just before you jump into that kind of suffering, so you're open to the fact that certain degrees of harm and certain pains can be good for you as well.
I wouldn't necessarily say good. I'd say that they have their utility in creating a better life for you, but that doesn't mean that, the gains what you gain from that experience, I don't think makes life justifiable.
So let's stick with the bodybuilding example. So you'd say it has utility, but that wouldn't necessarily improve your life?
It's not that it wouldn't improve your life, it's whether or not that life is worth creating in the first place just to sort of have those gains.
Okay, so
gains from whatever small pleasures that you kind of get from that.
Okay, you're talking about the beginning, right at the beginning when you're born. I'm saying that if we take the principle of pain and harm, and an example of that is going to the gym. Can you see that there is? You described it as utility. I would actually describe it as, I'd describe it as something positive, effective, good, because of. For example, if you're stronger, it gives you more of a presence. You're able to defend your family. You're able to, say, pick up the shopping. You're able to play with your child. You're able to it helps with the experience of life. So how I'm just struggling to understand how that can be deemed to be that experience in itself, not in the totality of things. How would you deem that to be something of negativity?
Well, I mean, the pain. I think it's the pain that you experience during that is negative, no matter what. It has a utility, but it's still pain. And I don't think that we'd be arguing in good faith to say that suffering is a positive thing. It can lead to some better things in your life. That's for the person who's already experiencing those things. If that makes sense.
When you look at suffering, would you concede that we are viewing suffering using our smaller lens, our understanding of life and of experience? Often when we see pain and suffering, but when we ask the other person, they may not necessarily see pain and suffering like we're seeing it. For example, again, coming back to the gym example, somebody would say, you know what, I went there, I suffered and I struggled, I didn't like it. Yeah, therefore I came home and I'm not going to go there again. However, if he goes to another person who loves going to the gym, because again, the more you kind of discuss and you unpack this, you realize that just going to the gym, for many people, it becomes like once you get past a certain stage, you get a release of endorphins, you get confidence. I would argue that the positives significantly outweigh the minute nature of the harm or the negative that you get from there.
I think we all see our experiences as different. We all see different levels of suffering. Some see them as positive, some see them as negative, and we all have different values to our life. Some people really value being strong, going to the gym, pushing through that pain in order to have a more positive experience. But that doesn't overall say that, well, because this person views pain as a positive thing in these certain aspects of their life, that doesn't mean that suffering in itself is a positive. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that suffering has a utility, and it needs to. We have to say, we feel fire's hot, take your hand away from it. Suffering is a part of our genetic coding that is programmed in us to make us live. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say is that suffering is necessary to make us live, but suffering isn't a positive. Suffering is created by life. It is an inherent part of life for those who are sentient.
But then here's where we kind of take divergent paths. sorry to cut you. It's that on the one hand we're saying we both agree that suffering is a bad thing, of course, by its nature. But
It has utility, but it's generally a negative experience.
of course.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, you're saying that, hence, as a result, we need to stop procreating, whilst we're saying that because nature is inherent, you need to learn to manage it and to control it, and there are ways to have a positive life experience, net value. That it is possible to have a net value positive experience than, say, a negative experience. Go ahead.
I mean, that's definitely where we suffer. Definitely where we differ, is because I don't believe that there can ever be a positive net value to life. And again, that comes back to what we had discussed before about whether or not we assign moral weight to creating joy. I mean, I think another way to think of it is let's look at sort of the best possible experience we could ever have and the worst possible experience. And both happen, on a daily basis. People experience extreme amounts of pain and extreme amounts of joy. Just because they, I don't see, if you could either choose between having both that extreme amount of joy and that extreme pain, or having neither, I don't see anyone in good faith actually saying, yeah, I'll choose, being skinned alive so that I can, be in love.
I'm just going to cover something I really should have covered at the beginning,
Okay.
Which is what that kind of leads to, which is, are you calling then for the end of civilization as we know it?
Yes, in so many words. I mean, antinatalism is about sort of prescribing the problem, which is that birth and basically the DNA molecule.
I'm just going to move this hair in the middle if that's okay, yeah, because I think it's catching me.
Antinatalism prescribes the problem, and then how we then get to solve it is, in an ethical way, is our own product.
End of humanity?
Yes, so humans would, if we stopped procreating, of course humans would become extinct. And I mean, I don't see what, of course there would be, things that would be lost, but I don't see that being a net.
Can I say
So when you've got like approximately 8 billion people on the planet, and they are going to obviously die because no one's procreating, isn't that causing suffering? And
Well, that they're going to die anyway, and that's part of the an important part of the whole equation is everyone is going to die.
That's wrong.
Not only that, but we are heading, with the way that we're treating the planet, we are heading into a really, really horrible death for ourselves and for the entire planet.
No, that's not the fault.
many things have happened before. There have been, mankind has gone through peaks and troughs. There's been positives, there's been negatives. But this is it's a very pessimistic kind of view to say that because suffering's happening, therefore the solution of that is to just stop everything and just to allow us to kind of wipe each other out.
I think suffering is also a very minimalistic way to kind of look at it. And I think that we're all in a very privileged position to sort of say
No, that's a maximum. If the suffering will be a maximum
that suffering, there's suffering, there's joy. I think that there are people out there who are suffering in really, really immense ways.
Yeah, but it's going to get a lot
But then,
worse.
what about the people that aren't suffering in immense ways? The people
Well, we all
that
suffer, and again, I think this also comes down to the difference that we have in the fact that you believe that there can be a net positive, and I don't. And again, that's weighing all the positives of the positive things that can happen in life, and all the
So
negative
Sarah,
things, and whether or not that risk is worth taking.
So, Sarah, what you're doing is you're basing it upon your kind of subjective experience, your limited understanding. Would you accept that you've come to this conclusion based upon your limited observations. You haven't observed everyone's life. You
No,
haven't,
of course not. I mean, that would be absurd to say that
course.
I've observed everyone's life and I've experienced everything.
Precisely.
But there are certain things that's the only way that we can interpret the world. I mean,
So the way we interpret the world that you've suggested is induction, which is a process used by science as well, which is you take your limited observations, and when you see there's consistency in there, you come up with a hypothesis, and that hypothesis is open to being refuted. It's open to being challenged.
Yeah, of
Would you say this is a hypothesis, or would you say that this is an end, an end kind of? Are you treating this like a fact or like a working hypothesis? I guess is what
I mean,
I'm
it's a
trying to ask.
philosophy, so it's a way of viewing the world, which I can't convince her. I mean, everyone's going to believe that their hypothesis is right, no matter
Right.
what. And all I can do is convince you. I don't think it goes against anyone's values. Honestly, I think that it's if you believe that suffering is wrong and that birth creates suffering, we're kind of halfway there. It's whether or not you think that something positive, more positive, can be gained through life than not. I don't see that being an equation that we should impose on others. We could decide that for ourselves, and if we could, okay, you can decide for yourself whether or not you want to live, but you shouldn't impose that on somebody else. Taking into account the suffering that they're going to cause others as well.
Where do you believe all of this started, and how do you believe everything started as you observe and as you understand?
Just everything altogether?
Yeah, I mean just the universe, earth, water, trees.
Yeah,
How,
I mean, I'm an atheist, if that's what you're going for. Believe in the Big Bang, just a cosmic soup that created us. It was nothing intelligent. We came to be through just crude forces sort of mashing into each other.
So out of the options, do you believe it came from nothing? It created itself? I mean, you've said you don't believe that there's an agency, so I'm assuming there are two options. If there are more than these two options, feel free to let me know. One is that it created itself, the universe, or the other one, it was created from nothing.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I couldn't tell you.
No, this is again just like this is a hypothesis of yours, a philosophy of yours. I'm merely just trying to understand the mind of Sarah. I'm not going to pin you down and say, "Haha, I've got you."
Yeah.
I'm not here to do that. We're just here to have a conversation and just share and exchange ideas. So I'm just trying to understand your worldview, because to understand where things are going, it's very important to understand somewhat the beginning as well. So would you say that, from your understanding, from your atheistic understanding, it came from nothing, or it created itself, or do you think there's something else that possibly I haven't mentioned that you believe in?
I mean, I suppose it came from nothing. Nothing could exist before.
So when we look at nothing by definition means the absence of something, isn't it? No thing means the absence of something, isn't it?
Yeah.
So from nothing, something emerges. It's a contradiction, isn't it?
Sort of, in a lot of ways, yeah. I mean, we can't really know for sure. We can only
And that's
have
fine.
hypotheses.
Yeah, of course. But what I'm saying, yeah.
I mean, what do you believe?
I believe out of the three options, the inference to the best explanation is if we look at the universe coming from nothing, again, that's contradiction. If we say that the universe created itself, again, that's a contradiction because it presupposes a universe, isn't it? So the universe created itself. So the universe created itself presupposes the term universe. It's like picking yourself up from your bootstraps. It's not really possible.
Yeah.
A mother giving birth to herself. So I'm saying that the plausible explanation is, and this is again through whether it's rationality, even philosophy as well, you've got the likes of Leibniz and Kant and Aristotle. They didn't necessarily have an issue with believing that there was something at the beginning, that there was someone at the beginning of the chain. So for me as a Muslim, I believe that there is
Jacob was not Jesus.
did it happen before when you guys were here? Okay, I think he's just making his rounds. Okay, so as a Muslim, I believe that there is a creator, and when you look at philosophy, rationality, and all of these things, it points towards some form of creator. Yes, we can. There's debates that can happen about who that creator is or what that implies, But to divorce a creator, for me, doesn't necessarily make sense, because the options to the contrary are, like you just said, coming from nothing, creating itself, which don't really make sense, which we don't really live our lives by those principles of contradiction. So let me put this to you. Let's walk through this. So you and I were dependent. Does that make sense?
So dependent on what?
Yeah, dependent on laws, dependent on food, dependent,
Okay.
And what we're dependent upon, that's dependent on something else, and that's dependent on something else. So as the chain of dependency goes on, it's implausible to assume that there is an infinite regress of dependent things. Yeah? So logically, rationally, there has to be an end to that chain for us to even exist. I'll give you an example. If, for example, if I'm to throw this glove, I have to ask his permission. He has to ask his permission, he has to ask his permission. If it goes on ad infinitum, would I ever get to throw this glove? I wouldn't. So there has to be somebody at the end of the chain to say, you know what, stop, yes. And then it comes, yes, and then I get to throw it. So my argument is very simple. It's that you cannot have an infinite regress of dependent things. Otherwise, us being a dependent thing, we wouldn't be able to exist. What do you think about that? Does it make sense to you?
It doesn't make sense to me.
Feel free to challenge it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's, I mean, the way that we kind of look at these things is like the Occam's razor, which is just the easiest possible explanation. Not the easiest possible explanation, but the explanation that includes the least possible jumps. I don't see religion that way. But again, everyone's free to practice their own.
Of course.
And I wouldn't really, I don't really argue based on religion, because it's just not, again, it wouldn't really be in good faith for me to, because, I'm an atheist, but yeah, I mean, I don't think that's the easiest possible explanation, or the most logical for me.
So you believe that there is such thing as infinite regress then?
I mean, I don't know. I just don't think it exactly works that way. I mean,
Walaikum salam. Let me break it down for you in another way. Thank you, brother. Thank you. So Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." Yeah. So for us to even, be speaking to each other, we have to presuppose existence. There are three forms of existence: contingent existence, necessary existence, or an impossible existence. Yeah. We take impossible existence out of the equation because obviously it's impossible. Yeah. Then you got contingent and you've got dependent. Sorry, you've got contingent and you've got necessary. We are contingent beings. We rely on something else.
yeah.
And if you continue that on, because that actually goes in line with Occam's razor, because as Occam's razor says, that sometimes the simplest answer is the best answer. But again, sometimes, not always the case. So here, when you look at the thing that's around you and yourself as well, you say you're dependent. That's dependent on something else. That's dependent on something else. And if we now start saying there's two options now, either there's an infinite regress or there's an end to that chain, based on your criteria of Occam's razor, it makes sense to say that, you know what, an infinite regress doesn't make sense because it will lead to other absurdities, contradictions. In fact, what is infinity? There's no such thing as a real life infinity. So to say that there is a logical end to that chain makes sense even in terms of Occam's razor. And this again is not something that's been contested by many kind of philosophers like Leibniz and Aristotle and even Kant of the past as well. So going in line with that, it's only when a person says, you know what, there could be an infinite regress. That's why. And I want to remove that discomfort from you, which is that you're saying, look, religion, I'm an atheist and this and that. We're just sharing ideas. I'm not going to be offended. You're more than welcome to give your opinion, and we can agree to disagree or whatnot. But I don't want you to kind of hold back and say, I don't want to. Just be honest. If you disagree with something, you disagree. I'm not going to hold you to it. But I just want to hear, because the reason why I'm linking it to obviously what you're saying, I don't want to retract or detract from that, is because because as Muslims and as theists, we believe that morality is objective. So we get morality from God. So if a person believes that it's subjective, then you're dealing with the harm principles, you're dealing with Kant's categorical imperative, etc., etc. So to pinpoint morality, it's predicated on the fact, and an integral part of the conversation is to bring in how everything came to being. Is there agency or is there no agency? Because once you divorce agency from the equation, that's when you then say that, you know what, as human beings we need to take control of everything and we need to stop procreation. But when you're arguing with a theist, then naturally you have to, it's going to be brought up of because they believe God, and God says procreate, and there is positives. Of course, the positives outweigh the negatives in procreation, and then what you're going to be, what's going to happen is you're going to be stuck in like a theological thing. You got one train going that way, one train going that way. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kind of align us onto one track, so we can have like a fruitful thing. So coming back to this point of an infinite regress, do you now understand why and how this argument kind of comes to being? When you look at existence, three types of existence, where contingent, you have an infinite regress. Infinite regress is illogical. There has to be an end to that chain. I'm not saying it's God at the moment. I'm just saying an end to that chain from which we started. That's all I'm saying at the moment. If that makes sense, fantastic. We can progress. If not, feel free to tell me what I can kind of correct for you.
I mean, it's just what something created something that created something that created something. I mean, it came from somewhere, whatever that something is whatever you believe in. I suppose I'm not really sure how it's relevant to.
I'll tell you how it's relevant.
I think that either way, we could still have the same moral arguments and conversations. Whether or not it's God or the universe, whatever created itself, or came from nothing. Again, I believe it came from nothing.
Okay.
I don't think it's necessarily relevant to right and wrong. I don't think that really has any moral weight, if that makes any sense.
Okay, so when you say something is right, you base it upon something that gives harm.
Yeah.
But when you look at, for example, somebody going to hospital, and when you go to hospital and you have an operation, maybe taking out a tumor or being operated on, even though you're going through pain and suffering, the net result is something positive, isn't it? Because it's increasing your life.
I mean, that would have to imply that...
Or do you argue that person has to die?
I mean, I think that's kind of the perfect example of what I'm trying to say, is that that person curing cancer isn't a net positive. That's reducing a negative. And that's all that I really see life doing, is we're just reducing the negatives that were caused when somebody was born. And again...
But sticking with the surgery thing, would you say that him undergoing surgery is a positive?
I mean, it reduces the negative. Which I mean, to me,
which is a synonym for positive, isn't
it? It's all about reducing negatives, whatever you sort of believe positive is.
What is a positive to you?
I mean, a positive to me, again, is reducing negative.
Would you say this conversation is a positive?
Well, I don't know. I guess that's whatever people take from it afterwards.
No, what do you think? I'm asking you.
Well, I mean, that's.
Are you having a positive experience?
I mean, yeah, it's nice out. We're sharing ideas, but again, like I said, it's.
So I guess
what has moral weight is reducing negatives, and when we're talking about we're creating these positive experiences by cutting out cancer, reducing childhood tumors, by curing hunger, like all these things are positives. Again, that kind of goes to my argument, which is that we're creating so many issues that really can't be solved without going to the source, which is the DNA molecule, which is birth.
Okay, so when you said everything, you believe that it comes from nothing. So taking the DNA as an example, it's a lot of information, and it's information that gives, let's just say a dictionary. You have loads of words in there, and clearly those words didn't come by chance. There was somebody behind it.
There are forces behind it.
So a lot of information indicates and a designer of sorts or a creator of sorts. Can you give me an example of a lot of information in your experience that has come by chance or by nothing?
Well, I don't think anything comes by chance. It comes by, there's
By
always
nothing.
something that causes something else. So, I mean, obviously something doesn't come from nothing. I guess that's what you're trying to say.
Well, that's my view, but obviously I don't want to put it on you.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get you to see it from a different angle. That if you look, Sarah, even in your experience, in my limited experience that I've come to the park, no one's ever given me an example of a great deal of information that just sporadically just pops up, and that's indicative of design. So what I'm saying is that if you take the inference to the best explanation, you look at yourself, you look at the symmetry of your face, you look at the functions of your organs and your body parts. They all have a function. Yeah. For you to assume that it came from nothing, I think it's what you're doing is you're taking something really integral away from the conversation here by giving it an answer that I don't think even yourself you would really kind of, it sits peacefully with you, believing that there was absolutely nothing once upon a time, blankety blank, and then suddenly everything emerged. Sarah emerged, I emerged, ink, cameras and intelligence. And
Do you believe that it created itself?
but that's a contradiction, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
so that to me doesn't make sense either, because it's like a mother giving birth to herself,
Yeah.
which again is a contradiction in terms.
Yeah.
And we don't go about our life, living on, saying contradictions. So there's a degree of rationality and logic
Yeah.
to kind of our existence as well.
You'd have to ask someone who studies that thing, studies this kind of stuff. Probably not kind of a random person on the street who's into philosophy.
But philosophy actually delves in these.
Well, I think that's more of a scientific question, where the world came from, where the
Not
Big
necessarily.
Bang came from. And I mean, it can be a largely religious question. People answer it that way. I choose not to.
Science.
I encourage people not to, but
Science answers the how. I would argue religion answers the why.
well, religion or for me, philosophy
Philosophy is the study of various ideas, and one of those ideas incorporates religion, which is God. So philosophy will challenge the ideas of a God, no God, etc., etc. What science tends to do is science tends to formulate, descriptivize what's around us. For example, forces. Forces describe how things happen. Forces don't cause things to happen. The Big Bang is a mechanism. It's not agency. So explaining how things are happening, that's fine, but it doesn't explain away the designer of said thing. And I guess the point that you were saying was, how is this relevant? And I think we kind of started this conversation a couple of times, but we got kind of derailed, which was that it's relevant, Sarah, because when you're talking about morality, either there's objective morality or subjective morality. Objective morality, the only way you get objective morality is from God.
well, I disagree with that because
Sure.
I believe that
Feel free to jump in, but if I just finish the point,
Yeah.
just so you don't think that I'm taking you on a different tangent, objective morality, I believe, and you're more than welcome to challenge that a bit later on, which is you get that from God. Subjective morality, if you're basing it upon a semi-harm principle, reducing harm. But even harm is subjective. It's subjective on cultures, it's subjective to communities, and even how people see suffering as well. Some people see suffering as that which, makes the man, or suffering that destroys the man. Some suffering that comes from God, if a person believes that they have a purpose and that there is a life hereafter, then this suffering is a means of them getting to the life hereafter. This is not the life. However, Sarah, if you believe that this is the only life, that this is it, then do you see that then there is going to be a bit of a clash, because what you're doing is you're dealing with somebody that believes that there is an afterlife, that there is a purpose, that there is a God, as opposed to somebody that believes, look, there is no purpose, comes by itself, contradiction, there is morality, but again, that morality, no two people will agree on that morality, because let's just say you might say, okay, I'm going to go down there, I'm going to shout. I might say, you know what, I'm not going to go there, I don't want to shout. But again, if you look at the context, there's there's a child that's about to cross the road, you shouting can save that child's life, or according to your worldview, reduce the negative. But regardless, some person will see that pain of the vocal cords being strained as a positive, because I think even reducing the negative is a positive.
Yeah.
So those are examples like surgery. Surgery is an example that I gave. Even sports. Somebody that will become stronger at the gym. These were examples that I gave of things that incur suffering, but have a reduced or have a net positive, or even even a general positive as well. That was in essence where I was leading the conversation. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was a lot to sort of respond to that, but I guess starting with, there's so much. Objective, subjective morality, I would say, I don't think that, sorry, there was just a lot to.
No worries, I can repeat some of the stuff if you want.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the only reason I said it all in one go was because I was looking at your micro expressions, and it kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, it felt like you were like, oh, he's taking me down on that path, and I don't want to be rude.
Yeah, I do think that we're getting away from the main.
So that's why, so that's why I brought it back to the position of morality, and I showed you how it's important, regardless. If we don't talk about God, talking about morality itself will be pointless. Yeah, it's like a heart can't survive by itself.
Yeah.
It needs an organism that contains the heart. It needs a system.
Well, that's sentience. That's us. We are that heart, and that's the most valuable thing I think in the world to protect. Is not just humans, obviously, all living beings who feel.
How can you protect something when you're calling for its mass extinction?
Well, that's the whole point. Once we are here, we exist, and we can suffer. Therefore, we are important to protect. Those who aren't here, because when you say extinction, it's this big sort of scary big scary word that kind of carries all these. I'm not.
You can give me a synonym if you want.
Well, I'm not happy. Extinction is fine. I think it's fine to use that word. It's not, a swear word, whatever. I think that when we talk about extinction, I'm not talking about like mass murder of everyone.
Of course.
I'm talking about working towards a future where we don't exist. And we're all going to die, no matter what. Everyone who's brought into existence is going to die.
Just remember your point. Just remember that point, because I don't want you to lose track. But when you say, I'm not calling for a mass extinction, I'm not saying...
I am.
Yeah. Of course, I knew that. But also, increasing one's life, are you in favor of that? So the people that are alive, okay.
Yeah.
Let's
have the best life that you have, like possibly.
So surgery and stuff like that.
Of course.
But okay, so you're looking at the net negative. So you don't mind these negatives that give a positive.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not arguing against surgery. I'm not arguing against yelling at someone in the street so they don't get hit by a bus. Like I'm about reducing suffering overall, and it only follows. So that not creating a being to suffer in the first place is the best way to reduce suffering for that being. There's.
What about unintended pregnancies?
I mean that's a whole other issue. What I feel about abortion.
No, just unintended. Two people that copulate and they don't intend to have a child, but a child emerges.
Well, I think that it doesn't really. Their intentions don't really have any bearing on that child and their life. I mean, I think that most people put more choice into what to watch on TV than whether or not they want to have a kid, and that's the biggest choice that you can possibly make.
So you're pro-contraception, yeah?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's a moral standpoint in itself, isn't it? So what about if you're using contraception, but that contraception doesn't work and you conceive?
Yeah, and you made you had an accident and something really terrible happened. I think that has the same moral weight. You did the best that you could. I mean, these are just things that happen. That doesn't have anything to do with what's right or wrong in morality.
Would you say you're a happy person?
I mean, in a lot of ways. comfortable, I have a decent life. Like, I'm very, very privileged, and I understand that, and I know that there are many people and other animals in this world who live excruciating lives.
So you're having a happy life.
Yeah, generally. I mean, not everyone's happy all the time, you know.
How do you judge? For what to you, if you were to see somebody, what to you would seem that they're unhappy?
I mean, to everyone has. That's hard to say.
I'll give you an example.
But
I'll give you an example through an analogy of sorts, which is a king. He was with his, his fan club, and they were going, and they saw a farmer asleep under a tree, and he said, "I would give up my wealth and I would give up everything, just so I could swap my life with that farmer, so I can have a peaceful night's sleep, just like he's having." So, the thing that we take away from that is to each their own, in terms of pleasure and pain, but to say that, you know what, the whole of humanity, it seems to me that they are, that there's mass suffering. Look, you only appreciate night because of day, happy because of sad, tall because of short. As human beings, we are people of contrast. Without contrast, we fail to kind of, it's not how we're wired. It's not how we kind of live our lives. It's only if you failed an exam once, you understand what failure feels like, then you're going to work harder next time. If you've only undergone success, then to you, it's not going to be, do you see? So that's how people of theology, people that believe in God, that's how they frame negativity, and that's how they frame pain as well. And a child...
That's fine. I mean, however anyone perceives pain in their own life is again, I don't think that has any weight on your morality. And again, maybe that's another way that... Would you say that you... I'm sorry, I think that you did answer this, but that you believe in objective or subjective?
Objective.
You believe in objective morality,
Yeah.
but that comes from God, that
Yes.
comes from somebody else. I believe in objective morality as well, and I think that objectively, the right answer would be whatever action...
Can you give me an example of an objective morality that's common to everybody?
I mean, you could just say something really simple, like whether or not I punch someone. Is that wrong or right? Like the amount of suffering.
I would argue right.
Well, I mean, if that person's going to punch 3 people, then punching them to stop them, like, I'm not, I mean, that's talking about deontology. That's like one action is always right or always wrong. I mean, if you, even with procreation, you could say, like, you're going to create one person, but that one person is
But do you see how
to,
that's not objective, though?
save hundreds of others from coming into existence. Like, that's not saying that morality is objective. That's saying situations on a case-by-case basis.
But isn't that the definition of subjective?
No, I don't think so. I think that
Case by case
is different than objective. I think that the overall theme of that is just that whatever causes the least amount of suffering is the right answer. Suffering, and again, that follows that suffering is the only thing that's really of value that there is to protect, especially when it comes to philosophy, morality, ethics.
But I think even that requires evidence in itself, because if that's your case, I would say, how would you prove that to a skeptic?
Feel pain.
And if a person feels...
That's it.
No, but...
you have a bad experience.
Not necessarily,
experience
Sarah.
True suffering. I mean, experience an excruciating death and say whether or not, like, it would be... whether or not you want it to stop. I think that it's...
But here's where agency... Sarah, here's where agency does matter. Because if you believe that there's pain, but pain is made from random molecules coming together, and it's a experience that it's not linked to any morality or any theology or any God, then that would be an issue. But if you believe that pain is a consequence of life, and the pain is in the control of the creator of everything, and he can alleviate that pain, and or that pain can be a means of a great deal of pleasure later on, for example, paradise, or for example, like I was born without a father, I didn't have any siblings, violins, whatever, but then afterwards, the experience that I gained afterwards of standing on my own 2 feet, learning from experience, studying even what you're talking about as well, a bit of philosophy, a bit of science, etc., etc., understanding, and then helping and assisting other people, I feel, to me, that's given me a great deal of happiness.
Yeah, that's great. That's really something worth doing.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to say is, according to my worldview, and that's why I think the God question is very important, because if a person believes in God, then to me the net or the belief is that, generally speaking, God doesn't burden a soul more than they can handle. That's a principle, and that's a principle that, of course, but that's, do you see? But here's the interest, and that's why I undercut that, and I tried to undercut that towards the beginning by discussing God, because I believe that you cannot divorce God from the equation, because the thing is, even if we're speaking, even having a discussion, I would argue even you can't either. Because of this, because when I was talking about infinite regress of dependent things, you would have to resort to absurdities to take God out of the equation, or to say, you know what, let's just deal with the morality for now, because either you would resort to saying, you know what, it came from nothing, or there can be such thing as an infinite regress.
I don't think that's more absurd than saying that God created it. Like, in all honesty,
you don't have to. You can say what you want to me. I'm not going to be offended, Sarah.
It doesn't.
Say what you feel. That's why I've come to you. If I'm giving a few, I don't mind receiving a few. Yeah, you know what I mean. So yeah, you can be at ease. You think it's absurd? Okay, I would say the inference to the best explanation, according to any and every experience that we've had, is that when we see design, it implies a creator. And when there is not a single example, when we've seen design and we've concluded that there is no designer, I'm saying that the inference to the best explanation and the logical explanation, whether you you refer to Occam's razor, or whether you go to the contingency argument, whatever it is, I'm saying all of these forms of knowledge point you towards a creator. None of them point towards something coming from nothing. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm not here to argue about religion, to argue about who created the universe, But as Sarah, an atheist,
But Sarah, it's going to come up. If you're saying, look, procreating requires a moral justification, and morality itself is subjective.
But why doesn't it? Why does it not require a moral justification?
Because even if you take morality out of it, it's a biological imperative for the survival of mankind.
Yeah, of course it is. And again, that's like suffering is a biological imperative. We need to suffer. We need to procreate in order to keep going. But why? Again.
But why is a question of philosophy, isn't it? Why is a question of religion? And when you divorce religion out of the question,
you can ask somebody else to answer the question for you, or you can answer it for yourself based on what you know to be right and wrong. And I mean, I think that that's something that we need to. Whatever you believe in, you need to also answer for yourself whether something is right or wrong. If you can't challenge your beliefs, you're never going to really answer or understand those questions for yourself. So no matter what you believe in, you need to ask yourself: is what I have been taught by the Word of God, my culture, whatever it is this right? Do I know this to be right or wrong? So that's why, I don't think that the question of whether or not God exists is necessarily relevant. I can't have
the point that you said about questioning.
About
the point that you said about questioning, just so I don't forget that, is that, look, by all means, if you are searching for God, you're searching for theology or whatnot, you need to question at the beginning. You need to question if there's a God, you need to question revelation, you need to question prophethood. But now what you're doing is you're moving the dial slightly. Because let's just say I have questioned those three things, and I have seen them to be philosophically, rationally, empirically, in terms of history, etc., etc., to be correct, and I have concluded the inference to the best explanation is a God. It therefore necessitates that then whatever God is saying is the truth, is the moral superior, because there is a God. If a person disagrees that there's a God, then of course the question needs to be on if there's a God or not. But if it can be proved, and if a person accepts that there is a God, evidentially or whatnot, and that's done, to then question, okay, I believe that there is an all-knowing, all-seeing creator of everything, but he got it wrong here. It's a contradiction. It doesn't make sense. Do you see? That's why it's so important. And I see what you're saying. Question existence of God and all that. By all means, that's what we're here as well. And that's why I'm saying, you can ask me questions on the existence of God as much as you want.
Yeah.
However, once we've established the baseline and we've established that there is a God, He sent the Quran, He sent the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, then to say that, okay, but this thing that he said about the Quran, I think we can answer better than him. To me, that doesn't necessarily make sense. That's...
Yeah, well, we can agree to disagree on this.
Of course,
I'm not
of
going to
course.
change your attitudes, and it seems like you're not really going to change your attitudes either. So
But I think with these conversations, it's interesting because it widens our perspective. We get to see and experience things from different angles. It's not necessarily about convincing anybody or getting them to kind of see your thing.
I know I'm not going to convince everyone, and you know that you're not going to as well.
Of course. So with that,
again,
So
we're getting away from the main argument.
Yeah. So I would argue, Sarah, the main argument is not about somebody else giving birth to a child. It's about you. Yeah. It's about Sarah. It's about how you came into the world, where you're going. Because look,
then would you say that we don't have any imperative whatsoever to help others?
Not necessarily.
We should only control our own lives, because
what I'm saying is that's a part two. Part one is when you're speaking to any skeptic, Sarah, the one thing that you have to get them to accept is that they exist. Because if they don't believe that they exist, the conversation is futile. So it starts with thyself, and that's why even Descartes said his famous cogito ergo sum. Yeah, I think, therefore I am. So that's why, although I understand you've come, with a purpose, and you're more than welcome to speak to other people or whatnot, but I don't accept this premise that we're detracting away from the main argument, because I believe that the main argument is you. The main argument is me. How did we come here? And is the answer that we are currently given about everything that we see around us, the immense amount of design and complexity, indeed there is suffering, but the immense amount of design and complexity and the purpose and meaning that we see around us, I would say that can't be divorced away from the question. And when you do speak to other people today, you'll see this as well. Yep. This will constantly come up in the discussions, because
that's why I don't really go down this, because I don't.
And that's fine.
Talk about
but in order,
I'm not going to change it. Like, if you're religious, I'm not going to change that, and you're not going to change the fact that I'm not. And I don't, like I said, I don't think that. Of course, it has a really significant bearing in the sense that I really can't convince people who believe that they already have the answers.
But you can challenge those views. You can challenge the premises.
That's why obviously we're all here, because we believe that we can spread these memes, we can get the word out there and get people to kind of question the way that they think, and that's really important. But I don't think that we should necessarily go too far down that road, because
I would say it's that, and
in this particular conversation, I think that's fine. Kind of come to a head.
And then maybe if you're ever in the park and you're not in this conversation and you see me around, then maybe we can just have a think about what I've said. Even if you want to speak off camera or something, I'll be more than glad to. I understand obviously you've come with a thing, but yeah, that's fine. Yeah, nice speaking to you, Sarah. I'm just going to take this off. Take care. Where's
the Prophet's got to pray Asr?
Did we pray Asr? I prayed Asr, yeah. Okay, alhamdulillah.
How do you stop filming? Do you know how to stop filming?
Yeah, just. Oh, your head.
Your microphone here.
Yeah, say. Oh, which one? Oh, nice. Is there any more here?
No, this is. Oh.
Exactly.
No.
Which ones?